Today I want to talk about the Sohl Furniture Bar Cabinet. I'm going to be covering the assembly process, some measurements, features, just some notes and my use case for it. I've got quite a bit to say about this thing. So I've actually been in the market for something like this for quite a while. Since I moved, all my coffee and tea has been stored in a cupboard along with all the other little appliances that I use. My Kalita, my Bodum coffee kettle, just a bunch of odds and ends stuff. And I wanted to bring that stuff out of the cabinet so I could get some more space in it. But a lot of the coffee bars that I've found in the past are either too expensive for what they're actually offering or the feature set that's with it. And then lo and behold, I go to Aldi one day just to go grocery shopping and I come across this thing, the Sohl Furniture Bar Cabinet. Now, I don't really keep a lot of liquor or wine in the house except for really to cook with. So it's a little much to designate a storage space specifically for my alcohol. So instead, I kind of opted to transform it into like a coffee / hot beverage cart. So I picked this thing up from Aldi. It was $99, which is an absolute steal, I will say, for what this thing gives you. It's good. The cabinet comes in 2 boxes. It's 121 pounds altogether. It measures at 15 3/4 inches in length, 32 3/4 inches in width, and 44 inches in height. This thing is a lot taller than what I thought it was going to be. I mean, it's honestly the perfect height, but I was definitely expecting something a little shorter. It features a removable faux marble top, which I believe on the box they call it like wobble. It has stemware racks. On the box it says it has reversible shelves. These shelves are not reversible. The bottle shelves are battened with wood to store multiple bottles, and up to 16 bottles can be stored in those battened areas. One thing I really like about it is the mid-century modern style that it has to it. It's got a nice walnut finish. To keep the doors closed, it features a magnet with just a little slab of metal on the back of the door that you assemble. And it also has wall securing hardware that is included if you want to mount this thing up against a wall. This cabinet comes in at $99 and it's only sold at Aldi. And it's also very limited. I think this thing launched at some point in November, so it's kind of been in stores or trickling into stores. You're gonna have a limited time to pick it up, as they typically don't do second runs of this type of product. So like I said, I'm not really gonna use this thing for storing alcoholic drinks or anything like that. It's more so gonna be used for coffee and tea. And I'm a little low on Nespresso pods right now, but those battened areas work perfectly for the Nespresso pods and the long containers that they typically come in. They'll help keep them organized and tidy. Let's start getting into assembly. Flat out, I'm gonna say the assembly was an absolute pain in the ass. The instructions are detailed yet vague in some parts, and I found myself double, triple checking, quadruple checking what I was actually doing to make sure it made sense. Talking about the assembly manual, it's a mess. So it gives you some of the most basic rundown stuff. If you've ever assembled some furniture, you're gonna know the little push dials and you gotta line up the arrow to make sure things tighten in correctly, which it's pretty self-explanatory. But you get these blown up images of what you're supposed to be assembling, and they're all tied into just one figure at a time, and it's really confusing. The parts are all individually labeled with numbers on them, ranging from like 1 to 46, but they're not in any sort of particular order. In my mind, I would think that part 1 is going to be the first part I deal with, and part 2 is going to join to part 1, or at least somewhere around that realm. Instead, you're joining part 22 with part 1, or part 6 with part 14, and assembling it with screw 36. It's extremely confusing. To make matters worse, they get really detailed and nuanced in some of the instructions. Like there's, with 3 screws in the measurement 4x35 D, number 26, and 2 wood dowels. assemble the piece together. And it's just a lot of information coming at you that's really not necessary. I don't understand the point of labeling something with a letter and a number. Just give it a number or a letter. One or the other is completely fine. Another hang-up point for me was the stemware. Now, I actually had a tip-off on this. A friend of mine bought the rack around the same time I did and actually assembled it. And he said, pay attention to the way the stemware rack goes in. If you don't orient that correctly, your stemware is gonna have to be loaded from the back and you're gonna seal that off. And nowhere in the instructions does it specify that. And so it's very detailed in some portions, but whenever it comes to part orientation, it's extremely vague. So pay close attention whenever you're assembling it. Another minor frustrating piece to me, I mean, granted, this thing's $99, so I'm not complaining that much. It's actually a lot of quality for something at that price point. But one of the connector nuts that I was frustrated with, and I couldn't get it to lock into the screw. Whenever I really got to look at the connector nut itself, it wasn't shot completely like the other ones. So it just ended up being garbage. And I was actually short one, so I opted to not install it on one side of the drawer. I've probably got some laying out in the toolbox, or I can go pick one up from my local hardware store at a later point. But nonetheless, a little frustrating. Going back to part orientation, there are back panels that you have to install, and they're very thin pressed wood. And one side is finished and the other side is not. It's kind of a matte brown. And the instructions don't specify which way that goes. Common sense would tell you that the wood grain finish needs to be on the inside. However, I did opt to face mine outwards should this ever be taken away from the wall, and it would have a nice finish looking back. Assembly aside, the quality of this thing is, I'm honestly amazed with it. $99 got me a full cabinet with a drawer, with batten slots, stemware racks, and a faux marble top. And it's heavy. I mean, 121 pounds it's pretty heavy. It has some pretty decent hinges to it. The doors open at 180 degrees, which I absolutely love. And that marble top can be removed and you can just have a wood finish if you want. I did some looking around for products that are similar, and some of the other ones I found were upwards of $500 to $1,000 for something similar to this. And I really couldn't tell the difference between the 99 variant and some of those products that are around $1,000. My recommendation would be is if you found this and you are in the market for a bar cabinet or a little coffee storage area, pick this up if you can find it. It is really good. Keep in mind, you're gonna be spending 3 hours putting the thing together, and that's not an exaggeration. It took my friend 3 hours to put together, and if we eliminate the time it took me moving around the camera and stuff like that, it took me about 3 hours and 20 minutes. Anyway, I hope the video was helpful in some sort of way. If you have any questions, leave me a comment down below and I'll answer them. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, send it to your dad, and then you guys will have something in common.